Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about a set called Dark Phoenix. So you can tell by the box and kind of the shape of the shells. This one was actually based on Kinera Celest PhoenixCall, but this was a collaboration between a shop called ELISE Audio. Those of you who are familiar with the shop, it's actually based out of the UK. They have a web presence. This one is actually run by a good friend. His name is Sound Jedi. You can find him on Discord, and you should join his Discord because there's a lot of top-notch guys there talking about some really high-end sets. It's one of the really nice places to go if you're really interested in some of the higher-end sets, as opposed to sets like this price range. So, but it is interesting that he kind of took the time. He does have, I think, other collaborations with Kinera. I think on the higher end side, like the Loki or Vernande, something like that. It was way up there in price. This one is what, $110 or so on sale at the moment. So, those of you who are familiar with PhoenixCall, it is pretty much the same shell, but it has been darkened. It is no longer the red and blue theme, but same drivers, different faceplate, but essentially the same shell. The cable is no longer the red and blue cable. It is a SPC style cable. The box is generally the same, and I think he packaged it with a Dark Phoenix sticker on the front. So mine kind of came from him as maybe a personal set or a demo set. So it kind of looked like this, but kind of get the idea of what it is. And for the most part, the real changes are in the tuning. So this is a collaboration between ELISE Audio and Celest. ELISE Audio has done other collaborations with Symphonium and Kinera, and they kind of go in this way as well. They sort of take a set that was popular, put out by a brand, and then retune it and come out with a collaboration of where they've kind of retuned it to what they prefer or how they think it will sell for their customers. But, I think this one is kind of in that same kind of idea. It uses the same base of PhoenixCall, but then retuned it. And I would just it was called Flattening the V. And for those of you who go onto my squig or go onto his squig and take a look at these, you'll notice that the alignment is actually different. And this one is very much a case of you have to go by the tuner or the brand and say, how are these graphs supposed to be aligned and what was the intention? So this one is actually aligned around 1700, and that is to sort of reflect the changes that he made to the PhoenixCall tuning, and I would call it flattening the V. So lowering the bass and then lowering the treble, and that gives you a much more balanced, definitely more of a top-of-the-line, less fun, more natural style sound to it. So, yeah, I 100% agree with what he did there. And in the process of listening to Dark Phoenix, I will say I did pick up PhoenixCall again and say, so was I wrong about the original PhoenixCall? No, it is still a stage and volume scaling nightmare. Yeah, that is one set that just really 100% didn't agree with me. As soon as you turn up the volume, the whole thing is really kind of smashed in your face. It sounds very kind of harsh to me. It definitely had no volume scaling, and the stage was really pretty much right there smashed in your face. It was about as no stage as you can get for a set at this price point and these drivers and this kind of tuning. So what is Dark Phoenix? And I will say part of it is right there in the name. He dropped the treble a little bit. It does have a darker presentation, but by dropping the treble, I think it does really that intense center image of PhoenixCall. It's really no longer smashed in your face, and the treble now has balance and it's expressive, and it has both a lower and upper treble. It really everything that was missing on the original one. That fixes the volume scaling and also sounds a lot more natural than the original. And if you remember the original, I think a lot of people said it was fun, and yeah, it was kind of a fun set, but a little bit far from natural. So lowering the treble as he did there, I think that will require a rebalance with the bass, and that's exactly what happened on Dark Phoenix. So instead of this banging mid bass that the original had, now you have both a sub bass and a mid bass and a transition into the mids. And I'll say that's exactly what was really missing on the original. There was no transition to the mids. There was this kind of bang of the mid bass, and then there was a lot of this treble in your face, and the whole thing sounded very V-shaped between these 2 points. There really wasn't a smooth transition from bass into the mids. The whole thing was fun sounding, but kind of missing that point, and so it was perfect. As soon as you pick up Dark Phoenix, you sort of hear exactly what the balance should have sounded like and how there should have been a sub bass to it that gave you depth. There was a mid bass that gave you some impact, but you really needed both of those to transition into the mids, and that's exactly what he did. So removing the flattening treble level, this whole thing was very smashed in your face, very flattening on stage. Allowing the upper treble extension to be heard has the effect that you would want, a nice open spacious stage, and that's kind of exactly what you get on Dark Phoenix, exactly what was missing on PhoenixCall. So I think there is some good news and the bad news on this one. I think Dark Phoenix, it does sound like it was tuned by someone who has heard a lot of sets and a great ear for balance. And I will say Sound Jedi is a top-notch guy. Not only does he run the store, but he is super, super knowledgeable. He has heard tons of sets, and you can tell by the tuning on it. It's tuned by someone who has a really nice ear for kind of more expensive style balance, and that's exactly what you got on Dark Phoenix. So the bad news, if you like that quirky Kinera Celest tuning, it no longer sounds quirky. It sounds rather familiar and appealing tuning executed on some interesting driver configurations. As you know from PhoenixCall, this one's a 1 dynamic driver, 2 balanced armatures, and 2 microplaners. So again, the guts are the same. It's just kind of a rebalancing tuning, and it's just a lot more generally appealing to me as opposed to this fun kind of banging style that PhoenixCall was. Dark Phoenix more represents what you would expect on a nice hybrid set at this price point. So yeah, I think he it's not really bad news for me. It's probably bad news for people who like the quirky tunings of Kinera, but I will take this tuning over the original any day. So the bass, and again, most notable, the change was how the PhoenixCall was really mid-bass emphasized. It had really sharp hits, but no depth. It kind of had this shallow sound to it. And combine that with the treble level, it really had no depth. So the Dark Phoenix rebalances that, and a really tasteful level of sub-bass for the depth and taming the mid-bass impact, so it has more natural transition into the mids, and this will work for more genres too. And again, it just sounds more natural. It's more applicable to more genres instead of the fun pop or EDM or things that PhoenixCall was actually good at. This one will actually take you to a lot more genres that require a more natural bass shelf, and that's exactly what you get on Dark Phoenix. And the mids, the PhoenixCall had that fun, quirky mid. I don't know, quirky is probably the wrong word, but I think the tuning was kind of quirky on in general on PhoenixCall. Not exactly natural, but it was kind of fun at lower volumes. At higher volumes, the upper, mid, and the treble sounded almost abrasive. It was really hard to listen to for me. So Dark Phoenix does fix all that. You get this warm, smooth all the way into the treble, clean enough and natural enough to now hear the advantages of this hybrid configuration. And again, that was one of my complaints about the original one, was they had this really cool configuration with microplaners, and they gave you a tuning that felt, it didn't really transition from bass all the way through the treble. It had some really bright spots, some really spots of emphasis, but as far as a natural sound to it, it didn't really have that, and it didn't really show off what the drivers could really do. So with the treble, on the balance of the PhoenixCall was pretty far off. The lower volume, that maybe introduced more problems than provided benefits, but I think it's fine to be different, to dare to be different, do a tuning that's not Harman and all those things. And I think Kinera is actually pretty good at doing those things. But there really needs to be a reward or a payoff for doing so. And it would have been really nice if the original tuning had shown off what the drivers could really do and some of the resolution and treble range that it could really do. That's actually there, but doesn't really come up in the tuning. So the Dark Phoenix, again, fixes the treble, getting rid of the harshness and allowing people with nicer gear to get an ear on these drivers with proper tuning. Again, this one volume scales, stage, it also amp scales as well. And now you can actually hear what the 5 drivers can do. And quite nice. It's kind of shocking what it can actually do. And maybe some people who listened to it originally at lower volume, you kind of got a really good taste of that. But to hear it rebalanced and scalable, I think it's actually quite a nice set. And I would say that's pretty much the takeaway. I think PhoenixCall may have been a little bit ahead of its time as a few multi-driver hybrids followed it, right? The SM4s, the EW300s by Simgo, those all have these multi-driver configurations, microplaners, and there was a place for this warmer style tuning, non-Harman style tuning, and capable drivers, and it can sound like a true hybrid. So yeah, well, sort of, you guys who like the original, I think you guys were a little bit ahead of the curve. All the sets that followed it, even the Dusks and the SM4s, all those things tried to do this dynamic driver, balanced armatures, planar style sets. So it's kind of nice to revisit it and actually hear it the way I would expect this style set to be heard, as opposed to the original tuning on PhoenixCall. So now I sort of get sort of part of the love of what was really there. I just couldn't hear it because I either listened to at a higher volume or the stage was really just too hard for me to listen to. But to hear it all working the way it should, I think really nice job by ELISE Audio. And again, like I said, Sound Jedi has been around for quite a while, very knowledgeable guy. It's no surprise that he rebalanced this in a way that would more reflect a top of the line style tuning and balance, as opposed to more of the fun style that PhoenixCall had. So that's what I got on Dark Phoenix. So thank you guys again for tuning in, and I will see you next time.